Alright, I'm not gonna lie, we can just screw the intro. I'm sure you know who these two characters are. One Piece is the best-selling manga in the entirety of the world, and BlackClover is a very popular anime manga. So let's just get right into it. But before I do start off, do you like top-notch clothing and anime merchandise? Then look no further than Anime Express. Anime Express sells a variety of anime merchandise that are top-notch in quality and are sold for a low price, such as my personal favorites being the swords, hoodies, and jewelry. Speaking of a low price, if you use my discount code of Tempest10, you'll get 10% off any order you choose on me. With that being said, please be sure to check out Anime Express, and it will be truly appreciated. Thank you. Starting off with Luffy, I think the old forms of scaling for One Piece like the Whitebeard planetary meta are a bit outdated, convoluted, and generally misunderstood and wanked, and while I will go over them, I won't necessarily use it as a crutch for Luffy scaling, as in reality, I think the best way to scale current Luffy is obviously using his current feats and the most consistent feats such as his fight against Kaido, in which, in that fight, Luffy unlocks his famous Gear 5th transformation and uses an ability known as the Badrun Gun. The Badrun Gun was accounted to around 4.5 times 10 to the 24 joules, or around multi-continental. This feat should scale above anything Luffy could have done prior to this point, since Gear 5th is thematically and consistently shown to be the peak of his power, and yes, this isn't an exaggeration, this is blatantly and explicitly shown throughout the many forms of One Piece media, meaning any feat of pre-time skip Whitebeard being able to destroy the world or shake it using the Gura whilst literally on the verge of death, mind you, should scale below this version of Luffy. In this planetary One Piece is out of the question, at least using the Whitebeard version of the planetary One Piece meta. This is further consistent since things like world, or rather Sekai in Japanese, doesn't necessitate planet and can mean things such as planet, universe, and or society, meaning it is by this axiom that the claimant would have to substantiate why Whitebeard would be planetary, even if you grant Whitebeard his world-ending statements. In both the manga and SBS, it's more likely to be multi-continental, since the Gura is not only shown to be fragmentation in terms of destruction, rather than atomization or vaporization, but the entire systems of the warlords, admirals, and yonkos are all more politically based, rather than power, and obviously Whitebeard, like Luffy and Kaido, is a Yonko. Now that we got that out of the way, we can now go over Luffy's speed and abilities, since realistically, Luffy's arsenal isn't too vast in terms of AP scaling and even hacks, but he does have some stuff that I think will be able to maybe make a difference against someone like Asta. For starters, Luffy has his basic subset of abilities, such as his elasticity obtained from his Devil Fruit, but once Luffy taps into his gear transformations is where his real showings and feats really start to showcase. In tandem with his Devil Fruit, Luffy is able to use all three basic forms of Haki, including the advanced version such as Armament and Observation Haki, known as Future Sight. With Conqueror's Coding, or rather Rio, Luffy attains a form of durability negation that bypasses someone's basic durability and instead targets their internal organs, as seen in his fight against Kaido. During his fight against a character known as Katakuri, Luffy would unlock an ability known as Future Sight, and later on in Wano would not only encroach on Katakuri's power, but would outright surpass it with his eventual attainment of Gear 5. Future Sight, like the name would imply, allows those who have it to perceive events and attacks before they even happen. Basically, a form of minor precognition. Observation Haki also allows you to see souls and many other things. Lastly, there's Conqueror's Haki. Conqueror's Haki allows you to basically flex your willpower and subdue your opponents to the point where you can knock them unconscious. As I said, Luffy uses this ability in a different way and coats his Armament Haki with it, and it is used to overpower a hybrid Kaido before he eventually dies due to an intervention from a government secret, almost FBI-esque spy corps known as CP0. One of, if not the most contentious ability that Luffy quote-unquote has, is an ability known as Toon Force, made famous by the character known as Bugs Bunny in modern Western media, and shown throughout a plethora of different characters such as Popeye and many others. Now, whether or not Luffy does or doesn't have Toon Force is a topic of discussion in of itself, so I'll leave it up to you guys on if you guys think he does, because if you do think he does, it's going to be very hard for Asta to even damage Luffy, but I'll get into that later. In the Joy Boy promotional guide for the One Piece manga, Luffy's Gear 5th is stated to be the ability that can turn imagination into reality. People oftentimes will overweight this statement and claim Luffy can turn things like Naruto's Rasengan into rubber or a basketball, or simply think that Asta dies when clearly that's not the case. Luffy does have some sort of imagination-based abilities, however I think it's more akin to the awakening of his devil fruit being able to turn the surrounding area into rubber, rather than Luffy actually being able to materialize his thoughts into reality, because if that's not the case, why not think he's gonna beat Kaido as soon as he gets Gear 5 and beat him, in which, you know, that obviously doesn't happen. Now that that's out of the way, we can finally go over the likes of Luffy's speed. When it comes to One Piece speed scaling in general, there's normally 3 characters that always pop up when you talk about speed, those generally being Enel, Kuma, and the admiral known as Kizaru. Enel is mentioned due to his lightning-based abilities being stated to only be dodgeable or avoidable if you surpass the speed of light, which Luffy does eventually attain. Kuma is introduced during the Thriller Bark arc with a character known as Moria. Kuma possesses a devil fruit known as the Pawpaw Fruit. The Pawpaw Fruit possesses an ability known as the Pad Cannon that is able to deflect air at the speed of light, creating a pressurized shockwave, in which characters such as a pre-time skip Zoro, who is literally on the brink of death, is able to not only protect the rest of the Straw Hat crew, but dodge these quote-unquote pad cannons almost effortlessly. Meaning, I don't think it's too outlandish to kind of just say that Luffy is above, you know, Kuma and, well, Enel, as I'll get into. Obviously, to the surprise of no one, Luffy, by the time he would enter and attain the Gear 5 transformation, would surpass both Enel and Kuma. So I don't think those are really the contentious parts of Luffy's speed scaling and or the entirety of the One Piece speed scaling as a whole, especially since characters like pre-time skip Zoro are able to dodge it while being significantly weakened and literally on the verge of collapse. However, the contentious part is if Luffy scales directly or even relative to Kizaru himself, which we now have more information on due to the current Egghead arc within the One Piece. As prior, Luffy would only scale to Kizaru through the Pacifista light beams, which were modeled after Kizaru, but don't actually scale to Kizaru himself. Clearly, however, in Egghead, Luffy and Kizaru would then face off, in which Luffy would show complete relativity to Kizaru and would even knock Kizaru out of commission and win the inevitable fight. So I think with that being said, it's just pretty definitive that Luffy is light speed, even in its base form, and especially with the numerous multipliers such as his gears and hockey multipliers with Rio and the advanced versions. So I think with the scaling provided, it's pretty definitive Luffy is multi-continental and not planetary, at least currently, and is most definitely is light speed beyond what ignorant down players of the series may say.
So to get the elephant out of the room, me and Tempest both agreed that anti-magic wouldn't be able to affect devil fruit abilities, as we don't want to go through the hassle of explaining what a devil fruit is and discussing if anti-magic would even work against it. However, Asta does have a few abilities that aren't Power Null exclusive, such as his extra perception and precognition with Ki. Ki is the flow of life energy, and it not only allows him to sense other people, but also allows him to predict the attacks before it even happens so he can better adapt and combat them. He also has very in-depth battle IQ, as he can take multiple of others' fighting styles and congregate them to his own unique fighting style. And lastly, the one that matters the most is probably his durability negation and soul manipulation, as he can not only enter your inner mind, but he can directly interact with your soul, as shown when he started to box up Patry's soul inside him. This can be consistent as the soul is not only their magic, but it's also the source of it. So technically anyone in BlackClover has a type of soul manipulation, and just also interacting with mana or the spells would give him said ability. He can just enter you and box up your soul directly now. As early as the first 40 chapters of BlackClover, we have the likes of Lick, who is not only the user of light magic, but it's stated to be light speed. Even the likes of Raya being stated to move at the speed of light as well, and they both are stated to be respectively getting faster than said fight. And we see that later in the Elf Invasion arc that the Captain Marimona is able to attack and destroy several of these bare minimally light speed attacks that are extremely close to her within all the same frame, with said feat being calculated upwards of at least 95 times the speed of light, and this is just assuming they're bare minimally just baseline light speed. And a base Asta is not only able to outspeed her already FTL attacks in an attempt to save Raya from self-destructing, and for the sake of argument, let's just assume that this said base Asta is the same as the Spade Kingdom Invasion arc, as when he enters Devil Union for the first time, he's able to speed blitz and one-shot a fuse Lilith and Nama, who just unfused. They are stated to be equal to 100% Dark Triad members, who just a base Dante was superior to an Asta and his strongest Black Asta state at the time. And just to point out, Devil Power is a linear measurement, as when his power is cut in half, he goes from 100% to 50%, making the difference between base Dante and 100% Dante 100 times difference. This can be consistent as just a 1% increase is prefaced to be a phenomenal times of an increase, making just 100% Dante and Lil Nama by proxy bare minimally 100 times said 95 times the speed of light speed feat, or they would be 9,500 times the speed of light. And when they fuse, they are stated to be more than double their power, as it says just more than 1 plus 1. So assuming they added together and then just doubled their power, they would be over 4 times faster or stronger, and they would be 38,000 times the speed of light. And also will only get magnitudes of times faster since this. With Asta's attack potency being extremely high from the jump, as in base he's able to one-shot the Fire Spear Salamander. With the Fire Spear Salamander stated inside Fauna's profile in the volume 16.5 official guidebook, being stated it can vaporize an ocean of 1,000 Ri. With just how big a Ri is and the vaporization factor for water, this feat's being calculated upwards of 8.414 times 10 to the 28 joules of energy, which is so unbelievably high into multi-continental, it's less than 20% away from being essentially moon level. With Spirit Ladros being stated to surpass the Spirit when he absorbed it, and the first Black Asta being able to one-shot said Ladros. To say the difference between those two increases was less than a 2 times increase is being extremely generous, getting essentially that early on Asta in those moon levels of territory. This moon level of power, if not higher, can be consistent as seen with Dorothy being able to create Glamour World. And yes, this is of her own creation, as it's stated on the volume recap for her character, and again stated by one of the smartest characters in the verse, so yes, this is of her creation. And mind you, everything in there is stated to operate and be made of the same real life principles. This is important as we can see 2 potential visible moons inside it, which are shown to look very similarly, if not the same as the art style as the real life BlackClover moon. And excluding the extra massive space that we see all around in it, this could arguably make this feat closer to planetary. This would still be higher end inside the moon level casually, in which also would scale to her in magnitude, as he's able to kill Zegrid, something not even Lick could do with the combination power of all the apostles with Dorothy as part of it. With this potentially bridging planetary feat being closer, as we see with 80% Dante able to create a gravity singularity. Now, a gravity singularity just by name is a black hole, or at least the center of it. People will try to claim that this isn't a real black hole, however we look at it, it shows all the criteria to become one, as it destroys stuff on a level beyond pulverization or even vaporization. This is even noted that it tears stuff, something akin to tidal force, as well as it sucks in any and all matter when it comes close or in contact with it, and even able to warp Dimension Slash was just stated to cut space, as it even has an accretion disk as well. Even Yami, while with one of his spells, allows him to create a defensive black hole, which in itself is also shown similar capabilities to a natural black hole. Thought if he collided his with Dante's, it would cancel each other out. And thanks to the Glamour World statement, which is in reference to even Luck and Magna's spells, we know that the properties of magic are the same as the real world principles and our counterparts. If you want to be technical, a black hole is just created from intense gravity into a specific point, and it's not really hard to say that a gravity user could do something of this magnitude. Not to mention in Yuki Tabata's previous work, he was purely scientifical based. He shows clear understanding of how black holes operate and work, as one of his characters is just literally using one. With that being the case, a black hole the size of a coin would have the mass and potentially be able to destroy the planet, with this being way bigger than a singular coin. Now, I can go far more detail on the scaling of Asta, but this was generally a watered down scale for every aspect. But me and Tempest agree that it's not needed. However, you are interested in the higher ends or more accurate scales for Asta or anything BlackClover related, I will be going over more BlackClover content on my channel in the near future. But overall, for this specific scale, Asta is massively faster than light with planetary scaling.
With that being said, I think when covering both character scales analytically, you can clearly see that Luffy kinda just definitively loses and kinda just gets one-shotted. Me and Crafty both genuinely agree, and I even established earlier on within the video that planetary One Piece, at least with the arguments conceived and presented, are pretty much inconsistent and aren't even necessarily logically sequitur to begin with Asta scaling to the lowest of moon level and then reaching those planetary tiers pretty consistently. It's not looking too good for our boy Luffy over here. So with that being said, Asta does definitively win, but I do want to ask, how big of a difference do you guys think Toon Force would make if we do in fact grant Luffy this? Do you guys think Asta's attacks would just bounce off of Luffy and Luffy would just turn magic into rubber and all of his scars would come off like he did an Egghead? Or would Asta just speed blitz Luffy and one shot due to the insane difference in scaling? Let me know in the comments, but with that being said, please be sure to subscribe to Crafty, as without him this video would not be possible. But once again, I hope you all had a wonderful rest of your day or night. Please be sure to check out Anime Express and use my discount code of Tempest10 for 10% off anything you order on me. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please be sure to subscribe, and till next time.